misogynists and chauvinists and sexists and misogynists and chauvinists and sexists and misogynists and chauvinists and sexists, misogynists.
The things that are on my mind is first of all, this the collapse of the cathedral narrative. Normie narratives, whether it's in politics, American politics, or religion in the West, the cathedral, as it's often been called, by a host of writers. Writers like Royce back in the day, writers in the Dark Enlightenment sphere. I actually like that terminology because it's a great picture for a big cult that's erected a worldview on a lot of lies. Lies like classical liberalism, Americanism, lies like unfeigning support for Zionism, Christian dispensationalism, feminism, egalitarianism, equalitarianism, on and on and on. The cathedral is losing its hold, its narrative. That includes even the World War II consensus and all of that. Now, this is kind of a good thing for sure. This is great. However, the danger is that people step in. Yeah, I'm not supporting the Dark Enlightenment. I'm just saying that the idea of a cathedral is a funny and appropriate image for the modern, postmodern, liberal, post-liberal cult that everybody is subjected to, that we live under. Now, pretty much all the things that the cathedral is built on are false. But it takes a while for people to see that. A lot of people in the alternative media, people like myself, and not just me, obviously plenty others, we talked about stuff 10, 15, even 20 years ago. And now you're seeing very mainstream, very popular figures, even bigger than Alex and others, begin to discuss on a large scale these topics. Tucker just has on a guy talking about geoengineering. Now, I wrote about geoengineering in my second book. The articles were written 10 years ago, but it made it into the publication in 2018. So almost 7, 8 years in print in Esoteric Hollywood too. And I first learned about whatever is going on through geoengineering in 2007. And I got a lot of people making fun of me, saying very mean, hurtful things. And did I give up? Did I quit? Was I butthurt? No. I continued on trucking, got my chips cashed in, keep trucking like the boomer man. I don't even know how that stupid ass song goes. That's the only part I know of it. I'm sure there's more to it, but.
And it's interesting because.
This does not mean that all of the voices out there are going to be saying everything right, or they're going to be getting everything 100%, 100%, to quote Sam Tripoli. They're going to be getting things wrong. They're going to be, people are going to go through the phase of the alien nonsense. They're going to go through the phase of let's rebuild Atlantis, and we're going to discover the ancient hidden cities of Atlantis, and all this kind of stuff. Jamie's in here laughing. Thank you.
Talk about Francis Bacon.
Francis cooking bacon in there. Francis bringing home the bacon with the new Atlantis. Atlantis is Atlanta. Y'all ain't heard that? Anyway, so the cathedral's narratives are collapsing. And that includes everything from Cold War, because we just saw everybody in a ruckus and an uproar over Trump bringing this former Al-Qaeda al-Nusra Jilani to the White House. This is a repeat of the Mujahideen in the 80s. Trump is very much a Reagan type of figure, and that includes all the bad parts of Reagan as well. So we'll talk about some of that. We'll talk about Jeff Stein McCaffrey a little bit too. But first, let's play this clip of Tucker unloading on
Ben Shapiro, the facts and logic, Babylonian Talmud.
It's fine. But Ben Shapiro spent, I don't know, a decade posing as someone who actually cared about your concerns as an American. He did it imperfectly. There were flashes that he didn't really care.
Now, remember, he was at all costs never Trumper. Not that I even care about that per se, but it shows a flip flop, right? Even if you don't like Trump, well, Ben Shapiro goes from never Trumper to supposedly
MAGA. Supposedly MAGA. 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 Donald Trump is not MAGA. Alex Jones is not MAGA.
And then they cajole and co-op Jordan Peterson onto their plantation. This idea that I don't talk about this stuff, that I'm a coward or whatever, it's just not even based in reality. Remember WorldNet Daily? Like, imagine not reading the room and wanting to sign on with something like that, right? That's basically where we see Matt Fradd and people like that.
I really care about this country and I'm against the trans movement or whatever. But increasingly, as everyone's gotten more hysterical and prone to sort of blurting out the truth, that veil has dropped and you can see what Ben Shapiro really, really cares about. So this is a very revealing exchange that took place 6 days ago, last Thursday, on stage with Megyn Kelly. Ben Shapiro was just sitting there being interviewed by Megyn Kelly and said something. He said something like, well, Tucker Carlson's, for Maduro, the communist leader of Venezuela, who I guess were on the way to killing or something, forcing out, regime changing him. And he defended Maduro. Didn't, actually. And Megyn Kelly says, well, Tucker said in his show that Maduro, most people didn't know this, whatever his many faults, I wouldn't hire him as an economist, okay? But whatever his many faults, has the most socially conservative country probably in the hemisphere. So Venezuela is just a fact. I mean, I didn't make this up. I'm not in charge of Venezuela. Just notice
El Salvador
that Venezuela has banned pornography, banned abortion, banned gay marriage, banned sex changes, and banned usury. You don't have credit cards with 40% interest in Venezuela. Okay. Ben Shapiro responded this way.
Tucker's made the point, I'm not going to here to be Tucker's defender, but he's made the point that Maduro is culturally conservative.
Who gives a shit? The guy's a communist dictator. Everyone in his country is eating dog. He's shipping fentanyl to the United States to kill Americans. Why do I give a shit whether he's anti-LGBTQ rights?
Who gives a shit? I do. I'm not moving to Venezuela. I'm not pro-Maduro.
Now, this is very relevant because this goes back to the bullcrap of the Cold War era narratives, right? And the propaganda that we always incessantly hear about Yuri Bezmenov and how Yuri Bezmenov was the hero because he explained how the KGB subverted America, blah, 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 blah. The problem is that if you go and read what else he believed in, you wouldn't have all the Skittles stuff in the Eastern Bloc countries if it was not for all the stuff that Yuri Bezmenov was pushing. And that was the CIA line at the time. All the Skittles, the poor Skittles are being persecuted in these Eastern Bloc countries. And that's why forever and ever and ever we've called this out. And Mark Hackard wrote this great essay back, 5 years ago. Who was Yuri Bezmenov? Well, when he defected, he immediately did these interviews back in the 1980s with G. Edward Griffin. And I'm not dissing G. Edward Griffin. I'm sure that he was a nice man. I don't know if he just recently passed away, if he's still alive, but I think he's getting pretty elderly. And I think G. Edward Griffin sincerely was opposed to communism and all that. But he immediately sort of platforms and just puts out the propaganda that Yuri Bezmenov's new masters want out, which is the CIA propaganda towards the close of the Cold War. And if you watch the full lectures, and I don't think most people do, most people have just seen the clip of Yuri Bezmenov talking about how KGB operatives subvert the government, right? But if you actually go read and watch the full interview and the full multi-hour talks and interviews with Yuri Bezmenov, he later on gets into how we've got to save the poor Skittles people in Eastern Bloc countries because they're being persecuted. And they need gay rights. They need gay marriage. That was the line of the CIA in the Cold War. We're going to fight the Soviets, not with conservatism, not with right-wing principles. This is the biggest mistake and flaw and failure that so many boomers and evangelitard right-wingers fell into, was thinking, oh yeah, we'll beat the Soviets with liberalism because liberalism's actually conservatism. Well, I'm an evangelical. We're going to bring down that wall. And we're going to have butt and church at the same time out there in the Eastern Bloc countries because the CIA is good right-wing people. This is so stupid. So when something like Maduro comes up, everybody's immediately being pushed back into the classic boomer era Cold War bullshit of, well, he's a socialist, so he ain't good for the GDP. And, oh, well, there's flotillas and there's drug boats. Okay, but the things that Ben Shapiro says he doesn't care about are the very things that ultimately bring down civilizations. You can't build a civilization on more GDP. This is the classical liberal narrative. That's why they always want to corral, just like they want black people in the Democratic Party plantation. They want to corral white conservatives, Bible Belt goobers back into the classical liberal versus communist socialist dialectic. And how long have we been sitting here saying this is a failed venture? It's dumb. There's no future for the country if everybody is, classically liberal. It's a dead end. And that narrative, post-Cold War CIA narrative, is collapsing. So what's being replaced? What's next? Well, that is the current fight in the system today. So we have the evangelical dispensational Zio goobers that are all going absolutely insane ape shit on Twitter. I mean, it's just like, if you go to your For You, if you're at all critical of this stuff, all it is now even Mike Winger, like goofball, just absolute goober evangelicals who, by the way, will not debate. I've asked him multiple times to set up formal debate. No way. Absolutely not. Even he's out here sounding off with the rest of the evangelical. These people are just such morons, man. They're so stupid. There's nobody dumber than an evangelical, especially an evangelical boomer, man. And they are the ones propping up these infinitards that just never stop. They never go away. However, their megachurch cathedral foundations are cracking and crumbling. We are now finally beginning to see some crumbling of this just absolute nonsense. Total nonsense. Mike Winger says Tucker and Candace are heading for a cliff. No, that's old. Oh, they're so bad. But these people, Matt Fradd, they can't read the room. It's your narrative that's collapsing, you goofus. And nobody is going to keep you. Do you understand? There's no more actual Protestant apologists left. Who's the standout Protestant apologist that's actually out there getting converts and winning people and doing debates? There aren't any. Who? Well, maybe Mike Winger could have stepped up. Nope, he won't debate. Wes Huff, he won't debate anybody. Now Ruslan wants to step into that. Well, guess what? Ruslan's a nice guy, but he sucks at debate. And if he tries to debate Candace or Nick or any of these people, he's going to get demolished. I mean, you saw our informal debate over something that he just threw a curveball at me out of nowhere, and it was terrible. Ruslan doesn't even know the basic fallacies. He's not going to handle any competent debater on a real big stage. So the whole evangelical Zio base is a bunch of just absolutely stupid people who will fall for anything. These are the grandmas that give money to the TBN preachers, right? Like, who would actually give money to these people? Well, that's the base. That's who we're talking about here. So there's a fight between them. There's a fight between the emerging dissident right that is now having public voices that's driving all of the Mark Levin's and Ben Shapiro's insane. And so there's a massive schism coming.
I would personally become poorer to end abortion, voluntarily become poorer to end abortion in the United States. That's not a choice. Don't want to become poor, but I would because I care about it. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're offended that I do, but I care about it. Lots of people care about it. I don't think pornography is good. That really hurts people. You know, I don't think pretending that the sexes are the same is good. And you claimed that you didn't think it was good, but it turns out, quote, I don't give a shit. Maduro's against Israel. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the only issue that matters to these people, right? Obviously, dual citizen operatives are not going to be America first. Duh. Like, who's just now figuring this out? And isn't it interesting that we know there is a paid marketing scheme, and we know these people are retweeting all this gibberish, like literally 24/7. I mean, James Lindsay's feed is nothing but this stuff 24/7. So I don't know what happened. Like, he must be racking it up or something. Allegedly.
Give a shit. Well, you spent like a decade pretending you did give a shit, that you were on the side of like normal Americans who have a mix of concerns. They definitely care about economics and they care about social issues too because they have children and they see where this is going. It's not good. That your economic condition is not the only measure of health. Your spiritual condition matters too. It's just a fact. It does. If you're totally degraded, it doesn't matter how much money you have. It's not worth it. It's not worth getting the whole world and losing your soul. Sorry. And most people feel the way, but not Ben Shapiro. He doesn't give a shit. So why the hostility? Well, maybe because if you keep talking about the so-called social issues, which are not limited to abortion and pornography and gay marriage, the trans issue, they get pretty quickly to economics, to usury, to lending money and interest.
Yes. In other words, everything that I've been arguing for the last 10, 15 years about the collapse of classical liberalism and the classical liberal cathedral, its foundations are now shaking. Samson is pushing the pillars apart.
And most people, including me, are not against lending money and interest, conceptually. But it depends on what interest rate it's being loaned at. So there are payday loans in this country that are 600% annually.
Now, remember, in the history of Christendom, for the first 1,000 years of Christianity, it was seen as immoral and forbidden for Christians to practice usury. And it is none other than the papacy that changed this position for the West and began to allow it. And if you doubt me on that, your own Catholic writer, Michael Hoffman, wrote an entire book on it. Usury, the sin that was and now is not. So your own Catholics have noted this. In fact, that's one of the interviews that Michael Lofton himself took down. And we're going to play that glorious Michael Lofton clip again because this arrogant D-bag who has spent so many years doing nothing but trying to get Orthodox deacons who are solid defrocked, trying to lie about me, everybody, the whole Jay is mean nonsense actually comes from Michael Lofton. With all of his underhanded nonsense, which ironically all the other trads and Roman Catholics found out that that's how just absolutely nasty and disgusting Michael Lofton really is. Now they all agree with me. Well, at the time, I was the bad guy. I was the one that he and Ibarra tried to get deplatformed from interviews. Yes, absolutely. Tried to get me deplatformed from Gospel Simplicity interview. Tried to tell him not to do it. Tried to warn him, all this kind of stuff. So that's what they actually do. They can't actually handle any real debate or discourse. And wait till you see what Eric Ibarra said. Kind of wild what he actually meant. I couldn't believe what Ibarra says. Now, people are saying, oh, Ibarra is going to be Orthodox. Ibarra's been saying this kind of stuff for years. He's been admitting all kinds of things. And then by next week, it'll be like he never said it. That's always been Ibarra's MO.
600% interest annually? And who's taking payday loans in this? Well, poor people are. And they're never getting out of it. They're car loans. They're credit card loans. There's private credit. We used to call it loan sharking. At exorbitant rates so high that people will never get out from under them. They're enslaved by it. It's called debt slavery. It's 100% real. That's not an ideological point. It's just an obvious observation. And it was one of the observations that Charlie Kirk was making on a daily basis before he was assassinated, which is interesting. And it's that kids are buying food on credit. Buy now, pay later. That's credit. You're paying interest on that, whether they call it that or not. Late fees. People are loaning you money at a much higher interest rate than, say, rich people are borrowing money. And that's bad because it's really hard to get out of it. And if you're wondering why the average...
Right. So let's be clear here. Sincere Hypocrite says, what is the Orthodox position on usury? It's impossible not to have debt in our debt-based economy. It's impossible not to engage with. No, the point is not that you're liable for something that you can't help. Everybody who engages in the fiat system is in some way attached, adjacent to usury. I'm aware of that. The whole system is based on that. That's the whole Federal Reserve system. So if the usury ideology collapses, that means the entire Federal Reserve IRS system collapses. The point is that you, as an Orthodox Christian, don't engage in that because it's not fair to people. It creates the scenarios of slavery that he's talking about.
American homebuyer, American-born homebuyer, is almost 40 years old. When the year I graduated from college, it was 28. How did that happen? People are in too much debt. This is probably, if it isolated in a world with a lot of issues, a lot of pressing issues, debt for young people is probably the number one issue, which is to say it's the number one thing that is destroying them and making it impossible for them to get married and have children, which Ben Shapiro...
And that is a big issue, but it's also, again, the entire Federal Reserve fiat scam system is a problem. And that's why inflation never gets better. It doesn't matter if Donald Trump or somebody else is in there, because there will never be a solution to inflation without fixing the actual monetary system. Even Ron Paul recognized that. Even Barry Goldwater recognized that decades ago. And have you ever noticed that that issue gets brought up every few decades and then it disappears and things just march on? But guess what? It can't march on for forever because all fiat currencies collapse. And I want to mention briefly that smart money doesn't wait until Bitcoin is going to the moon. Smart money puts its
one thing
value in when it's a dip. So this happens every time when Bitcoin dips. People say, oh, it's over, it's dead. No, now is the time, you dummies. This is when you buy. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not a registered financial advisor, but I believe that this is the perfect time. Okay, because I start talking about Bitcoin when it goes to a new all-time high, and then people are like, oh, it's too high. Oh, it's too high. Okay, well, now it's not too high because it's down from 125 to 94. So if you want to use my promo code right there to get started with Swan Bitcoin, Swan isn't a Bitcoin only company, and you can get started right there with Swan Bitcoin.